All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships podcast. And today we have Eric Farewell on the podcast with us. Eric, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, my friend. It's an honor to be here. And it's neat how relationships have brought us together for this moment. And I
Yes.
just so deeply grateful for the wonderful people in both of our lives.
Amen. I am with you. And yes, Michael Dash was the one who introduced you and I. And I'll tell you, you know what? There is no better way to get connected with somebody and meet somebody new in your life than through an introduction from someone that you already love and appreciate. And I mean, it is the absolute best way.
Hands down.
and
Hands down.
You and I already got to have a conversation and get to know each other a little bit. And what I will tell you, man, I've been checking out your stuff ever since, and, and that's kind of what ends up happening, doesn't it?
Indeed.
I've definitely been looking forward to this conversation. And so what we'll do is we'll just start on a really simple, easy question. What do you do, Eric, and who do you serve?
Well, I'm retired. I retired
Okay.
4 years ago at the age of 35. I've been building businesses since I was 13 years old, been working since I was 7. And this is
Wow.
actually not my first retirement, but this one actually took, which it's saying something. As most entrepreneurs you interview, we kind of have this addiction to producing, to
Yeah.
striving, to
Yeah.
completing. And for me, it was tied directly to childhood abuse and trauma. And I found that the more I worked, the more people told me I was a good boy and made me feel lovable, which was replacing all those different elements that I didn't have in my childhood. And about 4 years ago, I realized I didn't need that anymore. I didn't have to be the best worker and the most productive and all those different elements in order to actually matter. And so 4 years ago, I stepped down as CEO for my companies and I stepped away and I was able to put my life in a position where I could be of service to others, and then moved halfway across the country for my companies. And about 2 years ago, I was on a podcast like this with a friend. And next thing I know, people are asking me to consult and coach and help them figure out how to get free of their businesses. So here I am now. And I still look mostly retired. My work week is usually, about 90 minutes a week, but it's a very different kind of work. It's a work where I'm using the wisdom of my experience instead of the abilities of my brain to share with people and help them shortcut some of the hard lessons I had to learn the difficult way. And I now primarily that's what I do. So I serve entrepreneurs who are generally founders who have businesses that may or may not tickle their fancy of their passion. Most of them do to some extent, and they're starting to realize they want something more from life. They're waking up spiritually and realizing that what has got them where they are is not what's going to get them where they want to go, and they don't want to spend the years and years. I mean, it took me a very long time to prepare my business for me to step away. And we kind of shortcut that. We're able to build frameworks and such that allow most of our clients to basically cut their efforts by at least 50% and increase the revenue by double is kind of the goal
Well, that's a
baseline.
pretty doggone awesome result.
It is. I mean, the ones that I'm most proud of are the ones who are reducing their hours by 70 to 80% and increasing their revenue as well. Because, at the end of the day, what are we left with? Our legacy is not the money we have in our bank account. Our legacy
No,
is the
no.
relationships we have both with people in our lives like you, Kevin, and also our families. If we don't
Yes.
have a deep relationship with our kids, they're not going to want to come home for Christmas. We don't have a relationship with our spouse. It's the most expensive thing you could possibly have, particularly as a successful person, is divorce. And my marriage was on the fritz. So it was not only on the fritz. We were deep in the throes of this relationship is over. How do we cut things apart and figure it out? And
Wow.
eventually we found the work instead. And between therapy and somatic work and all these other things, we have the best relationship I can even imagine. And it still takes work. It still takes effort, but I have the spaciousness of my time that, you know, today I had a meeting with a nonprofit I'm on the board of. I had a great conversation with them. I have this conversation with you, and then I'm done for the day. That's it. That's my work day. And
Yeah.
it's kind of magic because she's having an interesting day, and being able to have the tools to be present with her through her own challenges, and also know I don't have to fix her because she's on her own journey is magical. So
Mhm.
it's really, I feel incredibly blessed. And
Yeah.
most of the people who tell these stories, like, my life is the best and you should have a life like mine. No, I've had the hardest year I've had in at least the last 9,
Okay.
financially, emotionally. We've had death in the family. We've had financial issues. We got doged in February, tariffed in April, had to lay off half of one of the teams of one of our companies. We had our production truck and trailer from one of our other companies flip in Montana, catch fire, burn to the ground, insurance covered less
Wow.
than a quarter of it. All these things have happened. But because of the work that I've done to get to where I am today, I can genuinely say I'm the happiest I've ever been. And yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah.
There are times where it's really hard,
Yeah.
but I'm so deeply grateful. And I have the spaciousness to be present with all of it instead of pushing those feelings down and finding ways to not have to feel them, and avoidance and all the things that I did as a child because I didn't have the tools. And now I do.
Yeah.
There's a very
Wow.
long answer to your question.
No, that was a great answer. That was you know what? That was probably one of the most prolific and amazing answers I've ever had to the question of what do you do and who do you serve? And so
Perfect.
that was a fantastic answer. And so you're retired now, but I mean, you still occupy some of your time with stuff that you choose to do. And so, what does inspire you most about the work that you choose to do and the impact that you get to make, Eric?
So it's an interesting world. Have been in business, like I said, for a very long time. I mean, 26 years. Started in this new thing called the internet back in 1999, selling airplanes because I wanted to own airplanes. And when I quickly discovered that ADHD kids are not designed to build airplanes, I put it up for sale. That turned into hundreds of airplanes sold over the next 5 years, which turned into an internet marketing career, which I then retired from at 23 and focused on what I love, which was flying and photography, built companies in both of those spaces, still own our paramotor flight school and manufacturing business. We have a media company that's associated with that. We have an aircraft racing series. All those companies I still love and I deeply value. Especially for me, it was the first taste. Like, not everyone's going to get a Burning Man. I've never been, but you hear people talk about going to Burning Man and having it change their life. You hear
Mhm.
people talk about going to therapy and having it change their life. And for me, flying was my first form of therapy. It was the first opportunity I had to shift my perspective of what truth was. What I identified as my perspective suddenly changed because I saw the world from a different place. Astronauts call it the overlook effect.
Okay.
And I deeply value what those companies do because many of my clients there will never go to therapy. They'll never learn somatic work. They're never going to be meditators or breathwork practitioners or anything of these things that have really changed who I am today. And so flying is a great tool for them. That said, 7 years ago, I lost my brother and he was 22. He was my first employee at Aviator. And he had a 3-month-old son. And it was this huge wake up call, this shift of understanding of what really mattered. And up until that point, I had been chasing these constantly moving goalposts. I have to make $1 million a year. I have to make $5 million a year. I have to make $10 million a year. I have to make $25 million a year. And there was a sense of satisfaction at hitting the goal, but it was so fleeting because the goalpost consistently shifted.
Yeah.
And after he passed away, it took me probably 6 months to have this realization of everything that I'd done really didn't freaking matter. I mean, it did. We had made a positive impact. My logo is tattooed on a ton of bodies all over the world. People believe in what we do. It's part of they call it a family. Our clients are vociferous fans. They're massive fans. Our racing series, we have one part-time employee, and I think we're pushing 1,600 volunteers, right? This is a
Wow.
for-profit business that has volunteers that run everything, right?
Wow.
Because they believe in the mission. They love the community, and we're really good at building that. But it wasn't fulfilling me anymore. And so about 7 years ago, I started the journey toward really looking inward at like, why do I do this? Why am I the way I am? Why do I work 100 hours a week and then crash every 3 months into a fever and just trying to recover and then go right back to it? Why did I mean, I got a vasectomy and I was back on the field working 24 hours later. Like that was my nature because that's where I felt like I was loved. And the reality, at least for me and for many of the founders I've worked with, is that there's a lot of childhood crap, challenge, trauma, big T, little t, that we don't know how to work with. We don't know how to look at. We don't know how to sit with. We don't understand presence. And over the last 7 years, I've realized that presence is the core of everything.
Yeah.
Presence is the absence of fear. Fear and love are antitheses of each other. So presence is really the truest version of love that you can give yourself and to the world around you. But everything else good in life is a byproduct of the choice to be deeply present. So I've learned presence is life. And today, my deepest goal is to help my clients do the same, because when we learn to be deeply present, we can engage with all that happens versus trying to push it down. For men, it's usually porn and alcohol and all these different abusive things that are really terrible for our systems, which I fell into these camps for many years, right? Because it was easy and then I didn't have to feel the pain. But when you learn that the pain is actually there to set you free, suddenly it's different. And I was talking to a client yesterday and he was sharing that he really struggles. Yeah, he's dieting, he's doing all these different things, but when it comes time to eat, he's on this 18-6 split. He's eating thousands and thousands and thousands of calories and doesn't feel like he has control. And it's like, well, it starts with getting present with why. Maybe you're being too disciplined, right? Maybe you need to have a good breakfast. Maybe you're eating because you don't want to feel something else. Like what? Just getting curious about the things that we do consistently has become such a huge part of my life. And it wasn't forever. Like I didn't feel curiosity. I felt compulsion and pressure. And so now I have the spaces, the time to go, why am I this way? Why are my clients this way? How can we look at this from a different angle? Because it doesn't necessarily, for 22 years, I've used alcohol as my primary numbing agent for my pain. I've broken my back twice. I have 5 herniated discs, 7 broken vertebrae. I was a test pilot and I was an idiot. And that pain is really, really high. Well, I haven't had a drink in almost 2 weeks, which isn't a long time for most people, but when it's the only thing, I can sit here and take this super aged bottle of painkillers you can see on camera that I have no idea how old this is. It's probably 10
That
years
label's
old.
a little bit old.
Oh, it's traveled with me for years. It's there just in case, but I chose not to take these. I'd have a glass of whiskey instead. And I got curious a few weeks ago. I said, well, what happens? Can I live with the discomfort of living in pain? And I can, and it really sucks, but I could take a couple months off. I can spend some time away. And at this moment right now, sitting here, I can't think of the last time I took 2 weeks off without having a drink. And it only happened because I got really curious about like, what is driving this action? How can I move through this? Because I don't want anything that ties me to fear. And I was afraid of feeling the pain that lives in my body. So here I am sitting in the pain. It kind of sucks, but here I am. I think that might have answered your question. Again, apologies for pontificating, but it's fun.
That's okay. That's totally okay. And I love, I mean, you know what? We're 330 some episodes into this experience in hosting this podcast. And what I love is how every single interview is so completely different from each other. And it's because every one of us are completely different from each other. There is nobody like us. And I am loving your answers to these questions. So for one, I mean, man, huge acknowledgement to you just for just being curious and like, what would it be like? Can I just sit in this pain? Why am I drinking and stuff? And just asking the questions like that, and just hearing you share what you shared. It's like, it's got me now like, well, why do I do what I do?
Because we all have things we do. The reality, and there's so much shame and judgment around it. We always believe like, oh, I'm too fat, I'm too this, I'm too that. And the reality is most of the time it's a coping mechanism. And until we are willing to actually go all the way down the spiral of shame, trauma, fear, all the different things, and realize that most of the time it's tied to something from our youth. There's a reason why, Freud talks so much about our childhood. The reality is most of the time, those negative things, those actions that we're taking are having negative effect in our life because we haven't been willing to get curious about the things that have happened to us, by us, for us in our youth.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. So, um, I really, we've got a little bit of context set here now. And I want to shift gears just a little bit and I want to move over into the relationship side of our conversation. And so, I'll ask the first question to get us going in that direction. So have you ever been introduced, Eric, to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
So the answer is absolutely yes. To give credence to the answer and value to the answer, I have to go wider.
Okay.
I couldn't have anything that I have without the relationships that I have. The communication, the connections, the people who have built me up, who've taught me, who've brought me where I am. Today, the number one most valuable one is my wife. She, to this day, when things are challenging, reminds me that I am a good man, reminds me that I do make good decisions, and helps me step outside of my own fears and anxieties. Her guidance and encouragement has kept me from the brink more times than I can count over our 16 years of marriage.
Wow.
That said, it didn't start there. When I was 13, I got my first mentor. I went to an internet marketing conference. I met Alex Mondozzi and I followed him around like a puppy
13.
dog.
Wow, that's
I begged him to
impressive.
make him coffee, carry his briefcase, whatever it took. Ended up moving to California, living in his garage,
You
following him
did.
conference to conference. Oh, absolutely. And this became a
So
testament to
I
my life.
know Alex, and
Okay, yeah,
so
yeah. So,
and
I mean, that was from 13 to 19, 20, somewhere in that range,
okay,
21.
okay,
Um, and I've since then have had dozens of other mentors. And I think that it's absolutely imperative as a human to have a mentor who is where you want to go.
yeah.
They've accomplished what you want to accomplish. They have the personal life you want to have. They have the relationship with their family, their kids, their world, their church, whatever it may be. You want a mentor who's lived the life you want to live and is already where you want to go. You want a coach who you pay way too much money to that makes it very uncomfortable so you can't not follow through on what they tell you to do. And you want a community that builds you up and holds you accountable when you fail. Those three things are absolute musts in my life. And deeper than that, every relationship you have is an opportunity. Like every relationship I've had in my life is an opportunity to pour into others and have them pour back into me. And certainly I've had many relationships fail. I've had many different, business partnerships fail. I've had lots of areas of growth and areas that I need to learn from, and I have learned from. But there are huge winners. And it started with having great mentors, great coaches, and deep accountability from community. And now I've built my life around that. The reason we moved halfway across the country is because my community is here in Texas. Right. I founded a mastermind called Front Row Dads, incredible men who focus on
Oh
family
yeah, John
business.
Vroman.
John Vroman, I was just talking to him an hour ago. And I came to Texas with my family and we said, oh my gosh, we have more friends in Texas than we do in Florida. And the next thing we know, we moved here 5 weeks later. We said, let's double down on this. Let's have men in my life who challenge me. Jason Bronstad, another member of Front Row Dads, he's the CEO of Malk. And I look at that man who gives me more hell than anyone else I've ever met and probably more love than I've ever received from another man, just deeply present, engaged, and challenges the crap out of me. And that's what I want. I want relationships that challenge me to be the best version of myself and that pick me up when I don't feel like I am. So yeah, relationships are life. I was telling you before we started recording, I have a client who turned into a referral engine, has driven tens of millions of dollars to our business. And, those relationships wouldn't exist if we didn't pour into them first.
Yeah.
If we didn't show them that we believe in them as much as they eventually believe in us. And that's why we have people who've tattooed our logo on their body. That's why we have, this deep sense of family in the thousands of people we've taught to fly. It is a deep connected place where we all follow the same vision, mission, values, and we have ritual, we have shared language. I was talking, I'm on the board of a group called Rising Man, which specializes in kind of Native American style rites of passage for men and boys. And I told him, I was like, we need to build ethical cults. Ethical cult is where it's at. You have to have shared language, share meals, and have great rituals. That is the basis for a great cult. But you want to do it ethically and don't sleep with anybody. So, but that's what they're building. They're building this thing that ties back to our roots as humans of the earth. And I just think it's so inspiring that there's more and more communities starting to do this. I see it as a way that people are waking up to recognizing that maybe you don't have to keep moving the goalposts. You can just work on you. And as a byproduct of that, you'll have more money, more happiness, more other things, right?
Yeah. Do you know Jesse Elder by chance?
Of course.
That's right. You and I, because the first time I ever heard the term ethical cult was Jesse years ago.
We met
And
last year. He came to a party at my house, and he was actually the only guest at my birthday last year. I was like, I don't want a party. I don't need that. And he gave me this gift card that sits on my desk because I never go anywhere but it's very thoughtful. And eventually someday I will go and get a smoothie. Jesse's the man. I love the dude.
I remember that now from our previous conversation that we had discovered that you and I both knew Jesse well and stuff. And yeah, when you brought up ethical cult, I'm like, that's Jesse.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, he is a cult leader in the best possible way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, um, so you've given some just really great examples here and stuff. And I want to dig a little bit deeper. So what is an example of a situation where you personally you got to make this really substantial impact And maybe even, I don't know, maybe even in the moment, it might have even surprised you a little bit. And you're like, wow, look at what just happened. And look what I caused that to happen. My actions were the catalyst for that. And you also know that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with whoever that might have been. What's an
Mm.
example of something like that, Eric?
I'll give you a two-part version. So
Okay.
part one is, for years, I think that food is something that binds us all together deeply, right? I grew up in a French restaurant. I started working there when I was 7. I've worked every position in the restaurant, from line cook to dishwasher to bartender, waiter, you name it, I've done it. So I love food and I love to cook. And so one of the things that we've always done at all of our companies is we cook for everyone. So if you're coming to learn to fly at Aviator, chances are you ate a meal that I prepared for you the first day you arrived. Then at National Stole, we cook for 100 to 200 people 3 meals a day because they're all volunteers. And how do you feed volunteers? How do you pay volunteers? You feed them, right? So we feed the heck out of people. And one day I remember sitting down for lunch and I'd made tacos or something. And I sat down at Aviator, and there's about 30 people there, but 10 that were learning to fly. And gentleman sat down next to me. So what do you do here? And I said, I won. You don't know that I'm the founder. You don't know I'm the CEO. You don't, like, that is the moment where it's like, I no longer have to carry the energy of this whole organization because it exists beyond me. And the other piece of this is from my friend Preston Smiles, and then his best friend, Garen Jones, who's another dear friend, or Garen Asse now. Garen and Preston have this beautiful saying. They say that community is currency. I'll repeat that. Community is currency. So many people fear going broke. So many people fear not having enough. So many people fear that they will fail. And the problem is we have this fear based on this tangible idea that the universe is finite. And it's not, right? The universe is infinite. We have abundance that is infinite. And when you have community, you can't ever truly be broke. Now, this year, my father-in-law hung himself. My business suffered massively from government contracts being canceled, from tariffs, from all these different elements that happened in our business. And it was very challenging. I mean, millions and millions of dollars lost this year. Yet in my community, I realized here I am building this coaching program, this mastermind, these incredible people doing incredible things. And I don't have a list, and I'm not doing any addition, like what I used to do is marketing, like where I'm promoting myself and posting LinkedIn or Instagram. I have no interest in being a social media marketing person ever again. Maybe someday I'll pay someone to manage it all for me. I just like, if we post this podcast and you post shorts and you tag me on Instagram, I might click the accept collaborator button. That's the extent of my social media marketing willingness right now. That said, what I realized was so important was I needed to ask for a withdrawal. Community is currency, but they only become that when you ask for support. And Garen put it perfectly. He said, Eric, you're not asking for help. The biggest bridges in the world are suspension bridges. They need support of others. And each of us are in different places in our lives and can offer different levels of support. So something we do in our mastermind is we do a ton of testing, whether it's gene keys and human design, Enneagram, Kolbe, working genius, all these different ways that we can have shared language around who people are, how they show up in the world, predictive index, culture index. I think they're all super valuable. And what we quickly discover, especially with working genius, Kolbe, things like this, if I have a Kolbe who is a super high quick start, and I know someone else in the group is a super high fact finder and a low quick start, I'm going to partner them. I'm going to say, share your genius. Yeah. Find the way that if you're a quick start and they're a fact finder, well, you can temper this person's quick start to make sure they don't make a mistake. Mm-hmm. And they can challenge you to not be afraid to drive forward. Yeah. Right. And so all of a sudden, I realized the same thing existed in my relationships, because I had people who have millions of followers on social media who have clients that would be perfect for me. And all I have to do is ask for support, because they want to support, because a rising tide lifts all ships. And it's something that was really challenging for me. I'm a human design projector, and it's my style to wait for the invitation. But sometimes you have to recognize where all your invitations are. I asked Michael Dash, he said, where can I help you? I said, well, I love being on podcasts. If you have any friends I should be on their podcast, I'm always a yes. Here we are, right? That was an invitation. He asked what I wanted. I said, well, okay, yes, I'll take your support. It's not natural for me. I'd much rather give my support, because then I'm in control. I'm in power. I can't be turned down. I can't be told no. That's much more comfortable for my ego.
Sure.
And I'm willing to say yes because my community is my currency.
Yeah. Wow. What not beautiful, but yet such a powerful example and explanation right there.
Mm.
Because, man, I think back to the conversation that I had with Jesse back in 2012. So this was 13 years ago. And at that point in time, we were having this conversation because, he, he could see things in me that I couldn't see for myself. And he's really good at drawing it out and bringing it to your attention and doing it, not just telling you, but just like bringing it out in a way that like causes you to get it. And so we were talking about relationships, and he starts asking me, he's like, when you give to somebody who just really appreciates it, how does that make you feel? And I'm like, oh man, I was like, Jesse, that's the most amazing feeling in the world right there. And he's like, right? And he's like, Kev, do you realize that by you being the way that you are and not allowing other people to give to you and not proactively asking for what you want, you are depriving other people from having the same experience that you just told me was the most amazing experience ever. And I'm just like, wow, I never thought about it that way.
You're stealing from them.
Yes.
And it's something
Yes.
I've had this conversation so many times. Like people are like, well, do you think you should teach your kids to maximize profitability or to be following their passions? I'm like, who am I to steal years of their life to tell them to make money?
Yeah.
Who am I? And it's the same idea in relationships. If you're not allowing others to pour into you the way you pour into them, it's a one-sided relationship.
Yeah.
There is no reciprocity, and that's the deepest part of a relationship. You can't be in a marriage. You can't even be a parent to someone that you're only pouring into. It goes both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because what you talked about, I have, for 13 years, I have been playing this game of how much can I expand my receiving muscle, knowing that, you know what, I'm just going to share anyways.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if I can expand my receiving muscle more, it just gives me more to share.
Of
and,
course.
and I have had some pretty amazing experiences.
Hmm.
And in fact, I hosted this event back in 2017 at my home here. And one of the guys that I got connected with was this guy, Michael, and he was a local guy. I live up about 40 miles north of Seattle. He actually lived in Seattle. And we got to know each other. We got connected to a friend, and he decided, yeah, Kev, I totally want to come to your event. And he said, but my biggest concern is I just don't know how I would best contribute to everybody else that's coming there.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, Michael, I said, for one, I said, man, that speaks volumes about who you are as a person. And I'm just going to invite you to just like let go of that and just come with the intention that you want to do that. And the how to will just make itself known in the course of you just being here.
Of course.
And he's like, okay. He's like, I agree with you on that. And he ends up calling me back 2 days later. And he's like, Kev, he's like, you know what? He said, I've been giving this a lot of thought. And I don't know if this will work out. I know you're up there in Arlington and I'm down here in Seattle, but he's like, if it would work out, and if you think your folks would like it, he's like, I would love to see this happen. He's like, I've got this 65-foot boat down here. And August is such a beautiful
Oh,
time of year in
perfect.
Seattle.
Of
And he's
course.
like, I would love to just offer that and just let all of the people come in, just let them come and see Seattle from the water. And it's an experience you can't get from land and stuff. And I'm like, wow, that's a really generous offer, Michael. And I'm thinking about this conversation that I'd had with Jesse already before. And because there would have been a time when I'd be like, oh, Michael, you don't need to do that, man. You're already investing your time and your money to be here. You don't need to do that. And that would have been the worst thing I could have done for him at that point in time when he put 2 days of thought into how can I contribute? And that's what he came up with.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, Michael, how that is really amazing. Man, I really appreciate your generous offer. And yeah, let's figure out how we can best do this. And so we did. And it was such an amazing experience. And of course, it was an amazing experience for Michael too. In fact, we've done a couple more things because he's like, Kevin, he's like, anybody that's around you, they are so amazing. He's like, man, anytime you want to come on the boat, you just let me know. We'll make a plan and you invite whoever you want to, and I'll host you guys.
That's awesome.
So, and we can experience so much of that if we just ask. And sometimes it can be a little bit uncomfortable
Of
to
course.
ask. It can be a little bit uncomfortable, because people, we think, oh, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to inconvenience them. Or what would they think of me if they knew I was struggling with that?
And I think the thing is that truth, that intimacy, that vulnerability is what builds the deepest relationships.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis said, "What, you too? I thought it was only me." That's the beginning of community, right? I just recently finished my second book, and I actually was on my way to the West Coast, and I wrote the afterword after writing the first 10 chapters, because I realized, like, 10 chapters in, that this sounds like a hero's journal of, like, I did the thing and things are awesome. And so I wrote this afterward of, like, the reality, like, these are all the hardships of the last year. This is the truth of the last year. All of these things are still hard. It's just the difference is now I have the capacity to be present with them instead of pushing them down or hiding or running from them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's learning that level of intimacy is so important, and it changes every relationship, whether it's your partner or your children or your business. You have to learn to ask in a way that it's not demeaning of masculinity or polarity. It's actually the most masculine thing you can do,
Yeah.
to truly say, hey, let me open my visor and show you what's inside. Let me show you my fear. Let me show you my pain. Let me be with you and let you see if you can hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, I'll tell you, man, this has been an amazing conversation, and I really appreciate you, Eric, for taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody who's like listening into this, going, "Man, Kev, I really like Eric. I like who he is. I like what he stands for. I like how he shows up." And maybe they'd be curious to just find out more about you and what you're doing and all that. Any websites, any resources we can share with
Yeah,
folks?
absolutely. Just ericfarewell.com, Farewell. My first name
Okay.
is spelled ERIC. We have a group called the Royals Mastermind. It's a group that are men and women who want to step into their king or queen energy, the version of themselves that is not overwhelmed, not living in fear, not needing something, not living in anxiety, just actually being deeply present with all that is. And the end goal is to have businesses that work to support us and build legacies that matter. So they can find out more information there. I do have a couple of books one's out since 2020, and the new one will be out next year in 2026. And would love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn or elsewhere. And feel free to reach out. I do manage, well, I have a great team who manages my inbox, but if you send a request to meet with me, I will make sure I set aside time. Just put Kevin Thompson in the subject line, and I'll make time for your listeners for sure.
Awesome. 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 Any last thing that you feel led to share before we call it a wrap, Eric?
I just want to encourage your listeners to drop into the deeper truth of why they listen to this podcast. There's something in each of you that's listening that cares about the relationships in your life and believes that they are the answer to your prayers, your hopes, your dreams, your wishes. And I want to open the idea that there may be a deeper relationship that you haven't overlooked. And that's the relationship between you and yourself. Kevin's amazing, a master at connection and at helping others see their own value. And what I think is so imperative to understand about each of those relationships is that while they're deeply important to have outside relationships and the people that help us see the reflections of ourselves, the relationship we carry with for us, for who we are, for honoring our challenges, is perhaps the most difficult to actually ascertain and to learn. And so I love that you have great listeners who are enjoying the idea of connections being everything. I just think that there's a deeper layer of connection to self and what that can mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I tell you, when we can, I connected with a gal yesterday. She's 62. And one of the she made a comment that just really hit me. That she's like, she goes, Kevin, she goes, I've just got to the point in my life where I am just totally comfortable with me and just myself, just totally comfortable with myself. And I'm
Yes,
like, you know what? That's an awesome spot to be, isn't it?
no doubt. No doubt.
When we can just be totally comfortable with ourselves, And
That's
yeah,
the mission.
that is.
From that place, then we can fill every other cup.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Eric, once again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you, and I'm excited to share this with a lot of folks. So thanks so much.
It's really my honor. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.